Okay, in this video I'll show you how I like to run MaxEnt. You do need to download MaxEnt off the web and then extract it to a folder. So here I've done that, and especially of the MaxEnt batch file and the MaxEnt jar file. Again, you can just double click on the jar file, but it'll run with the default memory, or use the batch file to increase the amount of memory. And what I tend to do is there is quite a bit of setup work, and you have to be very precise about the predictors for MaxEnt. So I actually use Blue Spray to set up everything. Here I've got some redwood data. And I'm just going to load this into Blue Spray, and you can see we've got the redwoods there. And then I'm going to go and grab annual precipitation. And I'll go ahead and add mean annual temp just as a couple layers to try. And then what I can do is I'm actually going to run the wizard to do Monte Carlo MaxEnt, and I'm going to do that first. And I'm not actually going to run a Monte Carlo. I'm just going to run one iteration, and then Blue Spray will automatically set up all the files that I need for MaxEnt. Makes things much easier. You do want to make sure you've got an ST temp file, and in there you want to make sure it's empty. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete everything out of here. Looks like that's from our previous Hemi run. You want to make sure that's an accessible file path with some space available. And the only other thing you really have to worry about is make sure that you have the right path to MaxEnt. So here I've installed it on my C drive. Whoops, which I just lost. Come back over to E, Project MaxEnt. You can put it anywhere you want. It's like Blue Spray, it's Java. So you can do whatever you want to there. But you do want to make sure that this path points to the MaxEnt jar file, because that's where Blue Spray will look for it. Then we go and we do a run. And Blue Spray is now running MaxEnt, and we'll talk in the next video about how to do Monte Carlo work with MaxEnt. And we get back a MaxEnt HTML file for our Monte Carlo run, but we're really not too worried about this, because at this point all I'm going to do is close that, and then I'm going to go back to ST temp, and you'll see that if we scroll down, we not only have all the MaxEnt results, but we have the samples file, the MaxEnt expects, okay, with the species, which is just always test, I don't remember why, and then X and Y coordinates. So there's our occurrences in the format that MaxEnt expects. Just move that out of the way. And then there's a folder in here with our layers, and you can see that these are the ASCII grid files that MaxEnt's looking for, and they should be exactly the same size. That's interesting, one is slightly larger. Well, that can happen with the variance in the numbers, but as far as the width and the height goes, they should be exactly what MaxEnt needs. So now we can go back to our MaxEnt folder, run MaxEnt from its batch file, and here's the MaxEnt interface. Now we can go and browse to STtemp, and there's our sample file, and then browse, we can go to our layers, and now we have our layers file. The only other thing we want to do is we do want to have a new folder for our output for this run of MaxEnt, and you might want to name it something better depending on which predictors and things you use. Now, the other thing I always make sure I do is create response curves, do jackknife, and this first run I'm going to run without changing the regularization parameter, but I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so it's going to run. Now sometimes you'll get an error message, which happens when your coordinates don't exactly fit with your predictors. And if that happens, that's okay. It will just eliminate those occurrence points that aren't inside your predictors. And it's done. So that's it. And now we can go to where we told it to put our outputs. In STtemp, run one. And if we open up the HTML file, ta-da! There's our curves. There's our ROC curve. Oh, we did rather well, 0.95. And then we can see what the cumulative thresholds were pictures of the model, so that's affected our habitat model, and then the response curves. We can see these are pretty complicated, more complicated than we'd like. And here we have annual precipitation, 60%, and temperature actually to 30%. We get our jackknife showing temperature is definitely the best, but precipitation did contribute a little bit. Okay, so those are the main outputs and how to run MaxEnt, but we would want to run it again, which we can do by just rerunning MaxEnt. Where'd it go? It's here somewhere. Java program. But now we want to change our regularization. So let's go ahead and change the regularization parameter, which is set to way down at 1. I'm going to crank it up to 5 and close that dialog and run it again. Output file exists. Now normally I would rename this, my run file, and save it, but in this case I'm just going to overwrite it because I'm just doing a demo for you. And now it's done. As you can see, MaxEnt's pretty quick. And back into STTemp, run 1, take a look at our test, and now we've smoothed out our response curves. And I still would probably smooth them out some more. Now one of the issues is we can't really look at AIC or the number of parameters directly with MaxEnt. This Lambda files does have the actual parameters in it. In fact, if you open up this file, you will see that here is the parameters that are used to create the response curves. Fairly complicated, but not too bad. This is called the Lambdas file, which you hear about in papers like E&M Tools especially. And what I did was in Blue Spray, I went ahead and added a utility where we can go into the MaxEnt Lambdas file and go to our run and go to our Lambdas file, and we can open it, click OK, and now it's going to come back and tell us here's a number of coefficients, number of linear features, threshold features, these are different features, number of backward hinge features. So it gives us all this information about the number of features. The other thing we can do, probably more important for us, is to be able to go in and run the wizard for MaxEnt. So I should say you want to go and work with MaxEnt, get the best model you can, then come in with those that file already set up, and I'm going to go ahead and add my covariates, and now we can do some Monte Carlo. So in this case I'm going to do 3 iterations. You can send the standard deviation map to the scene. In other words, that's going to send the uncertainty map into Blue Spray's scene. You can output each iteration's outputs. I wouldn't do that with 100 because it will take over your hard disk. There's a lot there. We can inject noise into the occurrences or into the covariates. We can also do cross-validation. Now, MaxEnt does some cross-validation internally, but we don't get to play with it ourselves. So you might want to do it there. I'm also going to change my regularization parameter. I'm going to bump it up to 5. Now, you can either change the regularization parameter or you can limit the number of features. Either one will simplify the response curves. They work in different ways. I like the regularization parameter, but other folks like to remove features to smooth it out. Either one is fine. I recommend playing with it quite a bit. It also talks about doing jackknife, and you can make MaxEnt visible, which I tend to do because I like to see the feedback. You don't have to. And I have to go.